Hey, this is Wicked Good from Off Curve, where I talk about Hearthstone on my drive home from the train station. But I'm not doing that right now because I'm listening to Concede. And so are you. What a coincidence. What good taste you have.
Greetings.
Hello.
Greetings.
My greetings. Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler.
Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Hello, and welcome to Concede, the Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. Joining you from Gadgetzan, New York, it's me, Ridiculoushat. And joining us from Karazhan, California, who do we have? We have Botticus. How are you, Botticus?
I'm good. How are you, Hat?
I'm very tired.
Would it have anything to do with certain movies being out in theaters right now?
It's so there's a certain movie that has had quite an incredible performance, and my back hurts, and it's been interesting because the summer just kind of happened like a ton of bricks, but it's not. This is not all about me, and you know what? I am energized by both the joy of talking about Hearthstone and the exultation in the return of our good friend from the Maelstrom, Louisiana. We have the one, the only, Team Crescent star, Appa.
I'm so happy to be back. I'm so glad we're done with moving. I'm equal parts glad and sad that we're done with vacation, but that just means I get to podcast again, so.
Yes. And also, I don't mean to jump right to this, but did any major life events happen while you were on vacation?
Oh my god.
And I lied. I meant to jump right to that.
Did you mean to jump to any specific thing, or?
The part with the person that you're gonna do the thing with.
Yeah. Taylor and I got engaged over vacation, so.
Where's my jingle? Here it is. And we can even do one of these.
Oh my god.
Pretend they're wedding trumpets. Hooray!
Hooray!
Woo! We have to talk about that right away. Congratulations, Mr. Appa. And soon to be future Mrs. Appa.
Oh my god.
Right?
I think it's gonna be hyphenated, so.
Yeah, well, not Mrs., not Mr. and Mrs., it's Mr. and Doctor. Because
there you go.
It's Dr. Taylor.
Yep. She also started her first week of work today, this week. And she actually did a filling on me earlier today, and my mouth. She didn't paralyze my face, so it's a good trip to the dentist.
It's congratulations?
No, she was just telling me stories about how, like, sometimes a dentist can, like, hit the wrong nerve with a needle, and it'll just, like, paralyze your face for a while.
I hope this is when she has.
Yeah, this was like right before she was doing it. She's like, "Don't worry, I won't do that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
So she told you about that, and then said, "Open wide. Let me do what I just told you would be real bad."
Yeah, but she's very good at her job, so
okay.
I don't have to worry about that.
I'm glad your face is not paralyzed. I know that goes without saying. I'm going to say it anyways.
Yep, and now I have a fixed molar. So eating sweets does not hurt anymore.
That's also seems good.
Yeah, for the past, I think, year or so, I've had like this tiny little pit in my like back molar, and I've had to chew on the left side of my mouth because if it touched the right back molar, I was just like, "Oh my god, my mouth's on fire." So it's good to get that fixed. Anyways, let's talk about Hearthstone.
You don't want to talk about your love life and/or teeth?
Well, we have like another 55 minutes to fill of the intro before we get into anything like last week. So
in classic Botticus tradition,
I think we can probably make this episode a little more streamlined because I'm not going to say that we're not important, but I am going to say that none of us have beautiful accents or interesting stories about, well, we might have interesting stories about how terrible HCT events are run, but they won't be told so charmingly. But it's okay. Well, before we go any further, Concede, supported in large part by you, the listener. If you'd like to find out how you can support us and receive rewards in return, head to patreon.com/CoinConcede. Let's talk about ladder a little bit. Botticus, why don't you go first? Tell us about ladder.
So I was trying to climb on NA because my thought was that I should be focusing on one server and not stopping until I get to a relatively high rank. But there seems to be some issues going on lately that makes it not very appealing to try to climb. So I went over to the Asia server and I built this like test rogue, and it's sweet. You get to just do a bunch of really awesome things, like a game where I got Frostlich Jaina and Antonitis. So I got to go like on turn 8, I went Antonitis, Prep, Fan, Hallucinate for Leyline Manipulator. Is that the? I think that's
Wait,
the card.
the one
This-
that reduces
the
all
4/5?
the
Yeah.
cards that didn't start in your deck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I got to then the next turn, obviously, play that, reduce the Frostlich Jaina, and get to fireball one of their minions, because obviously they became Frostlich Jaina. And then the game ended. Well, it didn't end on the spot, but they were very dead for a long time.
I was
And
about to say, it goes without asking, but did you win?
Yeah, I got to make 2 frost elementals the turn that I played, 2 water elementals the turn that I played Jaina, which is a lot better than 1.
It's
great.
about double.
Yep. So that's what
Wow.
I've been doing. I've been playing Test Rogue and having insane games, and it's great.
Sounds like a meme of a good time.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Also, getting Twig of the World Tree is really good in Rogue. I don't know if you've ever done that
Ugh.
before.
Oh,
No, I've literally never done that.
I feel
when
disgusted.
When you get to 10 mana and your Druid opponent's on 7 mana and they had like all of the ramp, it's great.
I'm trying to think what the best burgled card is possible to get in Rogue, because Rogue does a lot of things you're not supposed to do. I still don't know if that beats Archmage Antonitis, because Archmage Antonitis is pretty good in Rogue.
Yeah, that one's good. So is Lyra. I got Lyra
Yeah.
actually a few times. And the best part is sometimes you can just play it out, and like if they kill it right away, even if you get no value, it's fine, because then you play Tess and then you get another one. And that feels really good. Oh, I also got to like play Tyrantus and then next turn play Tess, which gave me another Tyrantus. Like there are so many things that you do with this deck that are just gross, and it feels amazing.
But so how many times would she have died?
A lot. They all die a lot. I'm actually climbing with the deck. Like, so I started off at rank 5 0 stars, started playing Test Rogue, and I'm like halfway through rank 4 now. Haven't played a ton of games. Like, my win rate's not amazing, but it's around 60%, so I'm definitely winning more than I'm losing, and it's brought me a lot of joy, which I was not having when I was playing a bunch of try-hard decks and not doing terribly well.
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously asking that because I wanted to see how significant the former nerf would have been. It sounds like it's pretty significant, but also, like, I'm really glad you found the fun. Finding the fun is pretty important.
Yeah, I'm like not really used to playing meme decks. I don't play a lot of them, especially not in ranked. Usually if I want to play one, I play in casual. I'll play like 4 or 5 games and lose most of them, so I stop playing it. But this is a deck like I'm actually winning with, and the ways you win are just kind of crazy, so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I might try a couple games. And then Appa, how about you? Were you able to play at all on vacation, or have you just been playing since you got back?
So, yeah, I played a very small amount because the Wi-Fi we had in our room in Mexico was horrendous. I think I counted at one point, and the amount of seconds between input on my phone and it registering, I think it was like 9 or 10 seconds. So I was trying to play Miracle Rogue on this connection.
Oh gosh.
Oh boy.
And I was playing with Auctioneer. That didn't
Oh,
work out.
boy.
That didn't work out so well. Be like auctioneer, and then it would be like a few seconds before he came down. It'd be like prep, and then it would take a few seconds before it left my hand. I'm like, not like this, no.
Man.
So I didn't spend like too much time playing. Tried, but yeah, played a little bit. But when I got back, I really wanted to focus on hitting Legend on EU because I was closer on there, as opposed to NA, which I was rank 5 at, and I think I was at rank 3 on EU when I came back. And I've just been playing a bunch of Rogue on EU because I discovered how much I like Miracle Rogue again. I haven't played it in so long, but I've been keeping up with Gyeong, who's a Korean player who has like 19,000 Rogue wins or something. He's just like crushing ladder all the time with Miracle Rogue, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna pick up this deck again and try it because it seems sweet. And yeah, I found my love for Miracle Rogue again, so I've been playing a ton of that on EU. And I hit Legend yesterday with the Sprint version of Rogue, which is, I think, is going to be a recurring theme throughout this episode. It replaces the Auctioneers with 2 copies of Sprints, and I replaced a Shiv with a Shadow Step. And I'm still running 1 copy of Shiv because I don't have Thalnos on EU.
Well,
So-
I feel like most people aren't playing Thalnos. Like, I haven't seen it, like, especially in the traditional lists that are playing double Elven Minstrel, but I cut an Elven Minstrel for a Thalnos just because when you're not on coin, Elven Minstrel feels really taxed when it comes to all your combo cards. And like, if you've ever gotten a spider off of a Thalnos when they like do a board clear, it is a great feeling.
Yeah, like Thalnos in the deck, it makes your bad matchups significantly better when you draw it. And it doesn't really impact your good matchups all that much. Like, sometimes you would wish you had an Elven Minstrel, but I think those times are fewer than being glad that you have a Thalnos with like a double fan versus Token Druid, or a Thalnos and a backstab on a Mana Worm on turn 2 or something.
Yeah. Oh, that feels so good when you get to do that.
Oh yeah, it's a good one.
And for those that don't know, Gyeong is unreal at Miracle Rogue. If you go to Hearthstone Top Decks and you sort classes by Rogue, and you just Control F for the word Gyeong, you will find that he has 4 rank 1 legend placements with Miracle Rogue in the past 4 months.
Bruh, so I've been following him for a little while, just like on Twitter and keeping up with just his Miracle Rogue play because he's just so good. And I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I got on Twitter and I had a little notification and said, Gyeong followed you. And I was like, oh my God, we made it. We did it.
Man, what's it feel like to be touched by greatness?
I've hit the Twitter big leagues, I think.
I mean, what you're supposed to
But
say
yeah.
there is the pleasure is mine.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, he's very, very good at Miracle Rogue.
Yeah,
Does he have replays on that one site that everybody keeps telling me about that I never remember
Probably.
the name for?
Meta Legend, metalegend.com,
Metalegend.
which is my new favorite thing, because for those that don't know, and we're going to keep shouting this out, it's HS Replay. This is a little known feature of it that's becoming more well known. The replays are public. Replays are not private. So if you log a replay, anyone can go in HS Replay and look at it. They have to do a little bit of digging. Meta Legend, what they do is they pull every replay that is legend player versus legend player, and you can filter it by top 1,000 or top 100, and anyone who submitted their replay, it gives you their deck list, and you can sort by matchup, you can sort by class, I think you can actually sort by player as well, and it shows you the full replay. Whatever card the opponent played, the full deck list of the person submitting the replay, and you can watch some really, really high-level Hearthstone there, up to the minute, like super current. And instead of it being on Twitch, it's on HS Replay, so you can pause, you can fast forward, you can interact with the game more. You get less commentary, but you get all these games in such a huge volume of data in a really helpful way. it's definitely worth checking out. And he might be on there. I don't know which servers it tracks. I do know that I mostly see NA, but I don't know if there's like a setting on there that I can change.
Yeah, I'll definitely. I was just. I know I was told about it before, and I didn't really pay attention to it. But I did a coaching last night with SC2 Forever, and he said you have to go to this site, and he like made me go to the site and look at everything there. I'm like, actually, yeah, this is really useful. So I'll be using it in the future, definitely.
Yeah, I didn't know this existed before actually right now, and this seems awesome. So I'm going to be on this site like constantly for the next forever.
Yep. Welcome to my world. I might check it more than Hearthstone Top Decks and Beer Brick, which tells you a lot.
Yep.
What about you? How's your ladder going?
So right now I'm somewhere between 500 and 600 Legend. I've been playing a bunch of stuff. I got pretty bored with Even Warlock pretty fast because it's a very good deck, but it does one thing, and that's you hit the button and then play big things until your opponent dies. So it's still pretty good, and I think I would still play it if I were looking to really make a serious climb, but I've also been enjoying Sprinticle Rogue. It's pretty great, and we'll talk about the differences between Sprint and Gadget a little bit later. I don't think it's hugely fundamental, but it does actually change a good bit about how your earlier turns develop. I tried a bunch of different things once I hit Legend. Big Druid was actually a lot of fun, but surprise, surprise, inconsistent. Because sometimes you play O-Card on 7 and your opponent immediately concedes because you get Drakari Enchanter, Dragon Hatcher, and either Greedy Sprite or Bright-Eyed Scout. And then the Drakari Enchanter doubles the Dragon Hatcher, and Dragon Hatcher pulls 2 dragons. And sometimes that's Sleepy Dragon Primordial Drake. Sometimes that's Ysera and Malygos. It gets pretty gnarly pretty quick, but I will say 100% of the time, when I played O-Cart, before my opponent hit 10 mana, they conceded immediately. Because on an empty board, it is 6 minions. 6. Which is disgusting. So, I played that, and I really enjoyed it until Botticus started spectating me, and then I lost 5 in a row. And so, I switched to something else. Yeah, thanks.
Had to bring you back down to earth.
Yeah. And there was actually a list of the Vivid Soul Dragon Combo Priest that I'd mentioned on the podcast a little bit ago, and people have been tweeting at me for deck codes. I actually think the one on Reddit might be a little better. It cuts the Acolyte, which I like. It cuts the Master Spell, which I don't love. And it only has 1 Inner Fire, but it has Witchwood Piper to get your Norshires, which I think is pretty good, and Psychic Scream and Anduin, which are both pretty important, because really, I realize with the deck, you're really looking to go off in the mid-game when you have 6 or 7 mana or so, and Psychic Scream kind of guarantees you're going to be onto either an even board or a board you're only slightly behind, and then you can just really go off effectively. It's been fun. I haven't played a ton of games, but it's definitely I enjoy playing it, and it's still very challenging. I tried out a little bit, but Sprinticle Rogue is still what I'm mostly focused on.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to have cards like Psychic Scream and Anduin in that deck, because with the loss of Draconid Operative, it really feels like you lose a lot of your mid-game presence that the deck used to. Like, you used to just be able to kind of play a mid-range deck that sometimes comboed and killed them. But now with like the loss of that really powerful like mid-turns card, having something to kind of reset the board seems pretty important.
Yeah, I was playing against a Taunt Druid earlier today. I ended up losing the game, but if it wasn't for Psychic Scream and Anduin, I would have lost 4 turns faster. So I don't know if that's good enough, but it felt better than not dying on turn 7. So I'll take it. And I guess that's us for the ladder. You know, I love our rotating guest profile. I also missed you guys.
Yeah,
I missed us guys too.
Yes.
It is nice to just be able to get into ladder and get right into news sometimes.
Yeah, well, and it's nice that we're all playing Rogue.
That just means everything is great, because when we get to play Rogue, things are great.
Yes. I firmly agree for a lot of reasons. But why don't we... Go ahead.
I'm having so much fun playing Rogue that there's a Control Shaman deck that exists right now that's very, very good, and I'm just choosing not to play it. because I enjoy the road deck so much.
Yeah,
That's impressive.
That's a pretty big indicator. Wait, control? Are you talking about Shutterwalk?
Yes.
Is that really control?
I mean,
It's way more control than like a lot of the combo decks. Like
Yeah.
it feels very rare that you actually are ever trying to rush out the combo. It really feels like you're trying to exhaust all of their resources till you get to a stable point to be able to combo most of the time. At least whenever I play against it, that's how most people are playing against me.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I guess it's like the free shaman almost. Well, I'm glad you're not playing Shutterwalk. Also, Shutterwalk, not that good. But anyways, let's go talk about the news. Let's talk about the news.
That always pauses like in the middle of going, so I don't know when it actually ends. But anyway, let's get into the news.
Yes.
Today,
Spoiler, behind the scenes note for the patrons. It doesn't pause. Botticus can only hear the right side of the audio because Skype only hears one channel. But you, as listeners, hear both channels of it, and that is a stereo clip. So Botticus only hears half the
is
guitar.
that why it sounds like things cut off?
Yes, the listeners don't hear that, but you do.
Whenever there's like little bumpers or clips and it sounds like it cuts off, I just sit here. I'm just like, I'm going to wait till Hat starts speaking because then I know it ended.
So this is a bit of Skype audio intro for the people that are interested. If you're watching at home, I hope you are because you don't get to turn me off. If you're a patron, you get to hear bonus content. And if you're a normal listener, then you don't hear any of this because it's gone. So the way this setup works is that Skype only hears a separate input that is analog wired. You only hear the right audio coming out of my mic and out of my computer. My personal audio is the left channel. The raw audio is the right channel, but you don't hear that because that gets routed into the raw audio, which is my backup file for everything in the sync track, which is how we have two separate tracks and why you don't hear yourselves talking. It's called a mix minus setup.
It's actually pretty cool.
Taught to me by one Ember Descendant. You may now resume the news. I hope you enjoyed this bonus content.
So, as of today, Choose Your Champion is available again for the HCT playoffs coming up at the end of the month. So I'll just go over the groups real quick. Maybe you guys have some input on who you think will win each of these groups, because unfortunately I don't know tournament players as well as you guys. But out of Group A, we have Raze, Viper, Zhao Ti, and Tensoku. The only name I know there is Raze. I guess Appa had brought up Viper earlier. Who do you guys think looks good in this group? I mean, I guess we don't have Decklists yet, so that usually helps a lot. But based on results, what do you guys think? Appa.
I know Race is very good, and I know Viper is also very good, and he's pretty well respected within the pro scene for the most part. So I'm just going to talk about this right now because I was going to talk about it when we got to like who we picked, but I think this is kind of important to just get out of the way. So I don't really know too much about the Asian Hearthstone scene or like the Asian players, and I'm not sure if that's through fault of my own and not keeping up with like coverage or content or something, or if it's just really that big of a disconnect within the community between like the Western players and the Asia Pacific players. I just don't know too much about any of these people. I honestly don't know any of these names from the Asia region except for Jinsu. And so I really have no idea like how to judge some of these players. But I mean, so with that being said, I know Race and Viper, and I know they're good. So I don't know about the other two.
Yeah, I mean, Race has had a pretty crazy year, right? Like he's already done really well in tournaments, right, Hat?
Race is definitely the most consistent tournament finisher here. He's got quite a few HCT finishes, and he is a Copa America final boss. Like, anytime you were playing in Copa America, I guess that's now HCT Rio, you are probably going to play against him in the elimination rounds. He's a Brazilian player. That's his home turf, and he defends it extremely well. So I would be comfortable betting on him. I do agree with Appa about I think the issue here is not just the language barrier, but the alphabet barrier, and that it's completely different characters. A lot of times these websites, if we search for some of these players using the Latin-based alphabet, we can find languages like Polish or languages like German or so on and so forth, but Russian and a lot of the APAC languages don't even show up in the search results because the names are not anglicized, and so it's just a lot harder for us to come by the information. We've got some tournament results, of course, to base it on, but there's going to be a little bit less social interaction just because of the barrier of language. So I unfortunately am also not super informed about all the players here. I do recognize Jinsu, and Tensoku is a up and coming Japanese player that's had a lot of really good results in the last year, but I would have trouble betting against Raze here.
Okay. Well, I'll just go through the rest of the groups and we can come back and say if we have any more opinions about them. Group B is A83650, Blood Trail, Nalgudon, and Yuyi. Group C has Jinsu, Rugal, Turna, and Dog. And then Group D has Leo, Killin' All Day, Glory, and Bunny Hopper. For my choose your champion, I chose Dog mainly because I watch his stream. I like him. I hope he does well. He seems like a good dude, so it was an easy choice for me. I don't know that necessarily he has the absolute best tournament performance, but I know he has done well in tournaments in the past, and I trust him to put in a lot of work to do well here. So that was my choice. What do you guys think? I'll go back to you, Appa. Who else do you like in these groups?
So I chose Dog, like you did, but again, part of that is because I don't know half of the field. So from the half that I do know, I kind of just chose from Bunny Hopper, Dog, and Nalguidon, honestly. Nalguidon is very, very strong, but I don't think he has the consistent tournament performance as Dog and Bunny Hopper. Bunny Hopper is kind of on a hot streak right now, so he's definitely a fine choice. But I went with Dog, and I'm not sure if this is just from kind of personal bias from being in the same tournaments that he's been in, where I've seen him do well. But I feel like whenever I watch a tournament, Dog's always doing very well. And he always brings a strong lineup, and he always plays it very, very well. So I think it would be kind of hard to bet against Dog, at least to make it out of groups.
Yeah, for me, especially when I watch him stream, which is obviously way different, just the rate at which he the rate at which he makes extremely high level decisions is insane to me. So when he actually gets into a tournament and slows down a little bit and can even improve his percentages even more, he seems like a good person to bet on to me. What about you, Hat? Who did you end up choosing?
So before I get into it, I just want to say Dog is a man after my own heart, except he plays fast and doesn't make mistakes, unlike me. I really enjoy anytime he's in a team tournament. He will call out a snap play in about 4 seconds, and then he will spend the remaining time in the turn explaining why that play is so good in about 4 different levels. And you can kind of see how quickly his brain works and how he's able to fill in the gaps because his instinct and his analysis line up really, really well. I do agree that seeing him rote more, he kind of figures out these incredible computational lines that he doesn't necessarily spend time on stream. But I will say that his tournament focus hasn't always been there just because it's so much more lucrative for him to stream. I do think he's an excellent player and he has a good shot of winning this tournament. I think there's a lot of really good choices here. My top 3 came down to A numbers, which is what I'm going to call them, Nalgudon and Bunny Hopper, because they've all had really consistent performances over the past year. My heart also said Killin' All Day because I love his story, and that guy is a grinder to end all grinders. He wanted to be good at the game and applied sheer will and determination to get there. I really hope he does well, but I had to vote for Bunny Hopper. Bunny Hopper feels like in every tournament I watch where he's in, he's somehow always in contention to win it. He's kind of a perennial bridesmaid, but when you qualify for 4 HCT tournaments in a row or something ridiculous like that, that's the kind of person that I want to bet on. I don't know if he'll make it to the finals, but I know that he's always there and always around. I think that it's only a matter of time before he breaks through. A numbers is also having a great year. He had 2 tournaments that he placed in the in first place in a row. He was in the top 4 of the HT qualifier, and he won that Polish Open that we talked about a little while ago, which is a major tournament. It's not, it's not a premier level, but it's still pretty difficult to win. And now Godon again has had a pretty consistent level of tournament level finishes. He's been around for a while. He's still really, really good. I do expect his day to come soon too. But I had to go with my man,
Also,
Bunny Hopper.
His numbers are higher than Tom's 60229. Therefore,
He has number advantage. He can't
Yeah.
lose.
exactly.
But what if that's reflecting like the Legend ladder where less numbers is better?
Ooh, good point.
Yes.
Either way, make sure everyone hearing this chooses your champion. You get free packs no matter how well the person you choose does, and obviously you can win more if they do well. So that's going to be happening July 28th through June 28th through July 1st. In case you're going to check that out on Twitch.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about this a little later, but I think it's just better to kind of bundle this in here because it involves 2 of the players competing. There's been a little bit of drama on Twitter between Viper and Turna because they played in playoffs. I'm not sure which playoffs it was, but Turna won there, and I think Viper's still a little salty about that. So in their player profiles for the HCT Championship, I've included the tweets here, but there's a line at the very end of Viper's profile that says Viper hopes to face off against Turna at HCT Summer, as he feels Turna is one of the weaker players to qualify. So Turna screenshotted that and posted on Twitter, and he said, "Yeah, sure, and then I'm going to destroy you like I did in the playoffs. I hope to face you as well, Viper." And so there was a little bit of back and forth on there, and I remember Viper saying something to the effect of, "At least I didn't have to rely on high rolling Barnes every game." So it's just like a lot of salt between the two. And then both of them played at Dreamhack Summer. Viper actually got paired down at 6-2 against Turna, who was 5-3, and Viper was playing for points at this point. So if he wins this match in the very last round, he gets points from HCT Summer. If he loses, he gets nothing, and Turna beats him 3-1. So they both end up at 6-3, and then Turna takes a screenshot of the match results, saying he won 3-1. He says, "Karma exists. Think twice before bashing other people publicly." And I just think it's like really good silly drama that's going on, and I hope they kind of keep this storyline going at the tournament.
I wonder if Hearthstone is going to go the WWE route and have kind of characters. You got your faces and your heels, and I don't know who the good guy or the bad guy is here, but I agree that this drama has no relevance to anything, and it is downright silly, and gosh, it's fun.
Well, I mean, we used to have Amnesiac, right? I wasn't really there for that, but he's heel and he's turned I
Face.
guess good guy.
Face is what you
Turned
call it.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
It's when we're ready to have a let's talk about wrestling episode. We'll bring Cora on. We'll have a grand old time.
Sounds good. All right. The next item of business here: meet the teams of HCT. This is a article on the Play Hearthstone website where they talk since the the pro team standings have finally come out, and they want to kind of introduce all of the players to the general public. So this is kind of a cool little article. So the team they go over this week is Red Reserve, made up of Sidonia, Mitsuhide, and Boztung. And currently they are I think it's 7. Yes, they're currently ranked 7th in the standings. So, yeah, just a kind of an interesting little article here. And then the next item we have on here is the HGG rosters have been announced. So we have you voted, and all the teams have been selected, so you can see if the people that you ended up choosing for your country made it. I think only one of the people I voted for made it, but not really surprised because I think I voted for Clay, which I didn't really expect him to make it. But did you guys? Who did you end up voting for our for US for this, or did you vote? Appa?
I'm
I
a
voted
Appa.
for Muzzy, Terrence, and Frozen. So I think the exact lineup that got chosen, right?
Yep, that would
Yep.
be it.
Yep.
What about what about you, Hat?
I think I voted for Ant over Frozen. I forget who my fourth player was. But yeah, I'm really happy that Terrence got chosen. He's a stand-up guy, and there's a lot of really good players here. Some of these teams are actually bonkers. Like I think the one that stands out the most in terms of names, the same as last year, but still a really good team, is the Netherlands. Tyler, Tice, Mitsuhide, and Theo. Like, just straight killers. Taiwan looks pretty good too. South Korea looks pretty good. Both Canada and America look pretty strong, and there's a couple other teams that look really powerful. Like Denmark is actually interesting. It's Twink is the anchor, and then it's Crane and the Hoy brothers. It's 2 Hoys for the price of 1. So it's we're not choosing our champion quite yet. Or wait, no, we already did.
We did.
Yeah, so we're not. The games aren't getting started quite yet. But I do think that there's a lot of really interesting teams out there, and as we saw from last year, team comp based on names doesn't always translate to wins, because we had some real dark horse candidates that made a pretty deep run. I think Mexico is the one that stood out to me from last year as the team that became kind of the people's favorites, that really made a deeper run than one would expect.
And they have Empanizado this year. Was he on last year? Because I know he had a couple of pretty sick runs, right? In various HCT tournaments last year.
Yeah, I don't think he was on last year, but I can actually look real quick, because we can edit this. He was on last year. Last year was Irvin G, Empanizado, Eunice, and Epsilon. And that's a pretty good roster right there, and they made it to the top 8. So they end up losing to South Korea, which, honestly, that team was pretty brutal last year. It was, Kranich, Handsome Guy, Flurry, and Dita Honey? Good lord. That's not fair.
Oh, there's just a lot. There are so many good teams. There are so many good Hearthstone players out there, and it'll be really exciting to see some of how HGG goes this year.
Yeah.
Anything else to say about HGG? Anything else we want to talk about, or can we move on to the probably one of the most hot button, not necessarily Hearthstone specific related, but obviously touched a lot on Hearthstone, which is the gaming addiction ruling that happened. I guess let me see. Let me bring it up here. It was who is now listed gaming addiction as a mental health condition, and they had kind of an interesting video of some kids talking about playing video games and how they play on average like 20 hours a week, and that instantly kind of became a meme from everybody on the internet, like those are rookie numbers. You saw a lot of that that going around, but I think it sparked a lot of interesting discussion, because it's pretty easy to kind of just swat that away and say, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. 20 hours a week is like, that's just something people do for a hobby. It's not a big deal, but I do think it's worth discussing, and I'm actually really interested to hear what Hat has to say, because I feel like Hat always is able to put into words things that I'm thinking in a much more concise and logical manner. So I'm interested to hear kind of your overall take on the whole gaming addiction as a mental health condition issue.
I think the first thing that indicates maybe that you're not in the best state of mind to discuss this, you just called me concise, which I think is not the best descriptor, historically speaking.
Well, you talk fast, so it sounds concise.
Okay.
So you get a lot of information in there, but in a shorter period of time than it would take me, because I would add a lot of ums and uhs and likes, which I'm trying to get out of my vocabulary as much as possible.
I think my take on this is Hat smart, lot words, small space.
It's because I'm short. Is that what it is?
Oh my god.
Yeah. Okay. So since I am the mouthpiece of Concede, here's what I'm gonna say. This is a complicated issue. It's a complicated thing, and first of all, it is a good thing that addiction is recognized anywhere that it could possibly form. And realistically, addiction has a lot of causes, typically related to life factors, whatever they may be, whatever a person's vice tends to turn to. And I think the indication that this is being taken seriously by the medical community speaks a lot to how far gaming has come. It is no longer something that isn't worth the time of professionals to study, to look at, to talk about. That's a big step for gaming, and I think that is really being understated here. There's been gambling addictions. There's been a lot of other addictions talked about. I think gambling is the one that is best used here as an analogy, and that's been in the DSM for quite some time because it's all about addiction is all about not what you're doing, but how you feel while you're doing it. And there might be various reasons or causes or triggers why it's happening, but for gaming to be so widespread and so relevant, for people to be talking about it this way, and for a diagnosis to be formed, I think really speaks a lot to how far gaming has come in its presence in the world. And I'm not here to diagnose anybody and tell you what's right and what's wrong, but I worry a lot about the community's response. I think Deck Tech was the one that first said this a couple days ago, that the people that are responding to this saying 20 hours lol are maybe not proving the point they want to be proving. And gaming is almost always not a profession that you can stake your livelihood on, especially not long term. It happens to some people. There are professional gamers out there. There are professional streamers out there. There are some that do very well. There are some that do extremely well. But there are a lot of people, and this is the same. Eve was the one that mentioned when I was talking about this in the Concede Discord the other day. Is it really that different from saying, I'm going to be a professional Twitch streamer despite having no existing social following versus I'm going to move to LA and be an actor despite having no prior exposure in the field? Is it really that different? No. It's all about, I want to be a star, I want to be famous, and I want to be able to make a living by doing what I love. Totally understandable. Not really that different, but also doesn't usually connect with success. Not saying you shouldn't try it if you're out there listening, but maybe don't quit your job first if you have one.
I think the biggest thing to look at is obviously, is it affecting your life in a way that disrupts your ability to function as quote unquote a normal person, I guess, is the way I would look at it. I think it's important to have the thought, at least, of, is this a healthy habit for me to be doing? Am I doing it in a healthy manner? Is there, just, I think it's important for people to think introspectively about their gaming, about a lot of things in their life. And if anything, I think them coming out with this article and having it added there is overall a good thing for helping people that actually need it, because I do think that there are people out there that are addicted to gaming. I mean, I think that it's just a fact that people are out there that probably need help with stuff like this, and hopefully they can find it.
Yeah, well, and the article, I don't know how far people dug into it, but the definition from the World Health Organization, first of all, this is really interesting that I found. An estimated 160 million American adults play video games. The percentage of people that could qualify for the disorder is extremely small. Players' ages range from under 18 to over 50. The male to female ratio is almost equal. And the official definition of gaming disorder is 3 points. First, a pattern of behavior for at least a year in which gaming is out of control. Second, the pattern of behavior must show an increased priority given to gaming to the point that gaming takes precedence over other interests in daily activities. And a continuation or escalation of gaming, despite the occurrence of negative consequences or behavior that affects one's relationships, education, or occupation. It's hard to find fault with those 3 bullet points. And it doesn't mean that if you play a lot of games that you were addicted, but I think it's important to note that if you're having a strong visceral reaction to this article and your initial response is to minimize it or to mitigate it, and say, no, I play a lot more and I'm okay, or lol 20 hours, or anything of the sort, there might be a natural defensive response that we're all ignoring. Because I know that for myself, there was a time in my past, in my early 20s, when I was trying to go to college, and it just didn't work out for me for a lot of reasons. But one of them was I was staying up all night playing Magic Online and Half-Life 2, and I wasn't going to class. I just wasn't doing it. And that was behavior that pervaded my early 20s until I got some help. And was the gaming the cause of the problem? I don't think so. I think there was other stuff going on. But was gaming the symptom? Absolutely. And some days it still is. There have been enough times where I've stayed up till 4 or 5 in the morning with work at 10 a.m. the next day, and I've really suffered for it. But I haven't been able to stop clicking the button because just one more game, just one more game. So, I don't know. I think the people with the strongest reactions might be the one that should maybe take a step back and just say, why do I feel this way?
Yep, I agree. Do you have anything extra to add to this, Appa, or should we move on to the next section?
Nope.
All right.
I am not a mental health professional, and I don't know. So.
All right. Well, speaking of mentalities, let's go into the next article, which was an article on HS Top Decks about cognitive biases in Hearthstone. This is their second article about it. And it is about hindsight and outcome cognitive bias. Hindsight is the, oh, I knew that was going to happen all along thing, even when you didn't necessarily know. It's kind of like the thing where you play for a certain line and say, well, if they have this and this, I just lose, and they probably have it, and then they usually what happens is they end up having it and you lose, and you say, oh, well, I knew they had that, I shouldn't have done this. And then there's also outcome bias, which is using results as evidence for things like misplays, like saying that, well, I made this play and they had exactly this, so therefore my play was incorrect. I actually think Hat kind of spoke about this recently on an episode of Off Curve that I was listening to today. That was definitely a great episode, and you should check it out. But yeah, this is just another article. I think we've talked about these things multiple times before on the podcast about the different cognitive biases, but this is just overall a good article for you to check out and kind of read into a few extra things. They had a really good example here that I'll go into when I find it really quick. Anyway, why don't you talk about this while I find this example?
If we're talking about the flaws in results-oriented thinking, there is no better person to talk about that than Coach and Team Crescent All-Star Appa HS. And Appa, I know that you personally have helped players and of all skill levels deal with these fallacies.
Yeah, like a lot of this just has to do with like just wanting to win all of your games, and in Hearthstone it's just not going to happen. Like realistically, you're never going to win 100% of your games. That's just crazy to think that. Like so let's say we're in a scenario where we have a line of play that gives us 90% to win the game and 10% to lose the game. We're going to take it because it's 90% to win. But sometimes we get punished with the 10% and we lose the game because of it, or fall really far behind and then end up losing the game to that disadvantage that was created. And we want to say, oh, I should have taken a different line of play. That's not true. You play Hearthstone to gain as much percentage points over the course of a game as possible, and you try and do this all the time. You always want to try and make the high percentage play. So even if that scenario, taking a different line of play, would have not given us that 10% to lose, That doesn't mean a different line of play was correct. It's trying to figure out how to word this. Like the article does a really good job of breaking this down, because it's just kind of human nature to be like, oh, I could have done this to be different than what happened. Like, you just want to take the highest like percentage points that you're given and try and run with them. That's just how the best players play. That's how everybody should be playing Hearthstone. And it's kind of hard to distance yourself from emotions, like when you get blown out, or like there's a bad beat and you fall really far behind in the game, or you're kind of on a losing streak. I know this happens a lot with people where they're playing one of the best decks in the format and they run into like 4 bad matchups and like lose 4 games in a row. They're like, okay, let's switch to a different deck that would have countered these that I played against. And then you just don't play against those decks because it's just randomized. And a deck is the best because it has the best percentage against any expected field. So that's kind of another scenario where people use like outcome or hindsight biases, and it's very difficult to distance yourself from these things because a lot of it is kind of attached to emotion, like at the hip. But just knowing that these exist is, I think, the most important thing, because I was like Hat in my very early years of college, like my freshman year of college, and I was skipping class a lot and I was playing Magic a ton and trying to improve. And I think that was one of the things that helped me improve the quickest. Was I read an article that just kind of outlined these things, and that kind of what drove me to be like introspective and just like self-reflect more than anything, is knowing that these biases exist and being like, okay, I'm feeling really blown out right now and like really tilted. Like, is there something different I could have done, or am I just like being biased because something bad happened even though I took the right line of play? So really knowing that these kind of things exist really will help your development as a player, as long as you're open to self-reflection after learning about them.
Yeah, and I found the example that they had in here, which is they presented a bunch of subjects with a hypothetical situation where they were told the percentage outcome of a successful surgery, and then they were told about surgeries that happened with that exact same thing and whether it was a successful or unsuccessful surgery. And naturally, when you think about it, you would think that the subjects would say, well, if there was a high rate of success, it shouldn't matter whether or not the surgery was actually successful or not. Or if it's a low rate, then that is a surgery that you probably don't want to be taking, even if the outcome was successful. And it was actually flopped. The subjects said, on average, said it was much better to take the surgeries that were actually successful instead of the ones that just happened to not succeed despite a high general overall success rate, which is not the kind of cognitive bias you want. You want to be thinking about stuff, and sometimes you're going to get unlucky. Sometimes you're going to lose the 20 percenters or the 10 percenters, and you just have to keep making those high percentage plays regardless of the result.
Yeah, this is where like results based thinking kind of stems from, is you're using past results to determine what you're going to do in a given scenario, even though the two aren't connected at all, because you're like scared of getting blown out or something, or you're scared of one bad thing happening. Like, you just want to take the line of play that's closest to 100% every time.
Right.
Yeah, human beings are not wired to be mathematical, analytical machines, and we're typically pretty anecdotal and experience-based as creatures. There's a really cool book about this called Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. Strongly recommend reading it because it shows how human beings are poorly wired to interact with experiences beyond their own. And that's generally how we react emotionally to things of, this happened to me, so it must be what happens. That's just how the human brain is wired. So these biases and fallacies are not uncommon, but Hearthstone is a game where, I mean, we've talked about a lot, and again, like Botticus mentioned, I talked about this in Off Curve, Hearthstone's a game of technical play and emotional management. And if you got those two down, then you're probably a professional. And if you don't have those two down, you're probably a human. And I'm not saying professionals aren't human. I don't mean to create that false dichotomy, but sometimes they have to not be, right? Sometimes you have to take the worst beat in the world and still try and win the game anyways. You have to turn off that aspect of humanity. It's very, very difficult to do, and human beings are just not meant for this kind of analytical, computational stuff. So if you react this way, don't judge yourself for it, but find a way to keep it from happening to you again, or to keep you from reacting to it.
So
Perfect.
this is a really good question in chat. So how can you tell if it was a bad play or if it was just variance?
Well,
That's an open question.
Okay. I expected Appa to say some really cool professional thing, and he was like, "Well, when I won,
Oh no, like it's very difficult to tell sometimes. I don't know, like an easy, I guess an easy scenario or an easy way to think about it is like if they only have one out in their deck, and you get one outed, I mean, you probably took a good play and just got blown out. Like, you equip a skull and they ooze it, like, you lost, buddy. I don't know what to tell you, but it was probably good since it was skull on 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way you can't all 100% tell, I don't think, but ways to improve your understanding, I think, is to obviously ask people who are better than you if you can. Take a look at replays and see if you can find similar situations. You do what Appa said, calculate like how many outs did they actually have. Was it more or less likely that this play was correct based on the information you have? Like, there's a lot of ways to delve into it, but sometimes it's both, honestly. Sometimes it was not a great play, but the variance would have made it so it didn't matter anyway. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't have tried to make the highest percentage play every time.
Errors in Hearthstone, there are really 3 kinds of mistakes, I think, that are most common. The first 2 more so than any other. The most common mistake is a sequencing error, and that is the one that is most easy to identify, and if you slow down, probably the most easy to address, but requires you to plan your turns, which is a skill that honestly takes a while to learn, and all of us are guilty of this at some point or another. If you've ever tapped last, you have made a sequencing error. Then there are suboptimal technical execution. Think about like Flame Tongue Totem or Direwolf alpha positioning. This is beyond sequencing. It's a little bit more subtle, but still creates a micro disadvantage. Another one is daggering up with Rogue and not planning out your turns or attacking the right point, and re-daggering with 1 charge left when you could have attacked the turn before, right? It's 1 point, but it's a micro disadvantage. And then beyond that is where lines of play start to come in, and that gets a lot more complicated. They get into game planning and playing to percentages. And choosing the wrong line, either based on lack of computing the percentages or just a game plan that doesn't generally work within the matchup, might not necessarily be a bad play, and that is where the difference between great and professional really comes in, is identifying a game plan that makes sense both on the math and based on understanding analysis of the matchup. But most of the people listening to this podcast, including all 3 of us, really focus on your sequencing errors and your technical execution, about maximizing the edges based on the cards in your own deck. And I think the error that most people can also really avoid making is the one where you hit end turn and then say, oh, I only lose if they have this card. Think about the card that blows you out before you hit end turn and before you make your first play. And we can call that a sequencing error. It's a big one, but it's also a kind of predictive error. If you fail to identify what you're playing into, that can easily be identified as a bad play. So I guess that's the third option. Those are the things you really want to work on. Beyond there, you're more likely to run into variance if your sequencing, technical, and predictive plays are all lined up.
Right. And just to kind of reiterate on this article specifically, I think the biggest takeaway is to not let results affect your decisions when, like, don't let complete information affect your plays when you have incomplete information, I think is the biggest thing to take away from this article.
Like every game is a clean slate, and unless you're playing in like a tournament where like the past games actually do matter because you're changing decks or something, like when you're playing on ladder, the past games just don't matter at all. You shouldn't really ever take like something that happened in another game and try and use that to like reason out a play in your next game. It's every game is different, and you should be focusing on what's happening in that game and the environment that's been created in the specific like game that you're playing.
Right. All right, a couple more small news items we have here. I thought this was a cool little article. It's the Hearthstone Legendaries you can safely disenchant. And it goes over all of the standard sets, and including Classic, and goes over some of the legendaries that are generally considered not necessary. So if you are looking for a little extra dust here and there, and you're one of the a person that is very tight on budget dust wise, this is a cool little article that maybe there are some legendaries in here you can consider getting rid of. But I strongly suggest reading the article and not just going to the large pictures they have and say, I have that one, let's get rid of it. I think you should definitely read they have little descriptions for every card as to why or why not to disenchant it. So I thought that was a cool little article in there. And then there's another one in here from the website Inven Global, and it's goes into evaluating the HCT Tour Stops so far. It's basically kind of just how HCT has been going so far this year. They interview RDU, Zalay, Bunny Hopper, and Sidonia and get a lot of their thoughts on the 2018-2019 HCT year. I found the article pretty interesting, and it felt almost like it had despite all the positive things they were saying, it almost had a negative tone, because almost every comment that one of the pros had was a suggestion on ways to do things better. So even though there was a lot of like positive things saying Hearthstone is putting more money into the pro scene, they're doing a lot of really good things, it really went into a lot of the issues that they're having despite all of the good things that they're doing. So pretty interesting read overall. Goes into kind of just things like overlapping of tournaments, how some of the tournaments line up with end of year or end of month, ladder finishes. You need, obviously, if you're competing for HCT points, every month is pretty important for you to get a bunch of HCT points to qualify for a bunch of tournaments. And overall, just kind of different suggestions that the pro players had after playing in a lot of these tournaments.
Yeah, this article felt a lot like they were saying kind of repeatedly, this is a lot better than what it used to be, but still not where it should be.
Right.
It felt like that was the big synopsis of this article, and it's actually really interesting read to get pro players' perspectives on it. But that's kind of the TLDR of it.
And how different pro players think differently about stuff. Like some of some of them are obviously very centered on their experiences and how they perceive HCT to be going and what would make it better for them. And others, especially Zalay, had a lot of really good points of just thinking about it from Blizzard's perspective, how they're looking at it and how he feels like they could improve things that still stay within what he believes to be their vision on how professional Hearthstone should be run. So definitely check out the article if you get a chance. I don't know if you had something to add to this, Hat.
I your average pro they're a pro because of their hyper analytical and critical ability when it comes to plays, but that doesn't get turned off when they're out of the game. They're going to hyper analyze and criticize anything with flaws and difficulty with logic. And a lot of the HCT system this year kind of has some issues with that. If you listened to our episode last week, HCT Soul had a lot of logistic issues. And there's some things that get talked about here that we don't often think about the pro player lifestyle. When the events run late, Sidonia said, there's no transportation at that hour. Walking an hour to your Airbnb after spending all day starving and playing is not fun. It's not enjoyable. And that's the sort of thing that I don't know if that would come up in our consciousness as, in our position. But these players that are trying to make this their livelihood, the system needs to work. Not work some of the time, not work most of the time. It needs to be something they can depend on. And if Blizzard wants to make a game where professional players can exist in this capacity, they need to get all the details right. And you look at what the amount of money and energy they're putting into Overwatch League, and I think HET is still pretty far behind that. It is obviously very different, not a team sport, not quite as spectator friendly, definitely a little bit more variant, etc., etc. But when you look at the disparity between the pro experience and the two, it's night and day. And again, the direct quote from Sidonia, big improvements have been made. I tend to be super critical, but it is a lot better now on average than it was at the beginning of the year. But a lot of the article is touching on issues the pros have experienced that still need to be addressed. And HCT Soul it had its ups, but it had a lot of downs. And I think that building quality of life for Hearthstone tournament players is very important if they want their esports scene to grow.
Yeah, I think we all just hope that they just keep improving from here. Hopefully they see this article, get the feedback, and can find ways to accomplish what these pros are asking for without having to sacrifice too much of their vision. Because when it comes down to it, it is their decisions on how they're going to move forward with competitive Hearthstone. And as much as people complain, I really like articles like this because it feels much more a much more positive way to go about suggesting changes than random tweets here and there complaining about certain aspects, which I think don't do a lot for Blizzard in terms of how they feel they can improve the tournament scene. The next item we have here is the latter MMR issues. I tend to, when this first started coming up, I tend to not delve too far into it for the most part, because it does affect me. But I think a lot of people exaggerate just how bad it is a lot of the time. But after seeing a lot of these screenshots, and if you go to this link, we have a link to the Reddit post where it goes into a few different tweets and different matchmaking issues. There was a player, and Hat said it correctly before the show, and I don't remember how to say his name. Guize?
Geyser, I think.
Geyser?
I don't know if that's correct. I know that's how I said it.
Okay,
that's not based on external information. Please don't think that.
Well, you said it with such gusto that I assumed you just knew it.
You
sure.
discovered my superpower.
So he was rank 4 legend, queued up a game and played against a rank 1 non-legend, which is it's a pretty big disparity. And this wasn't like right at the beginning of the season. This was 2 days ago. 18 days into the season, this happened, where he queued into a rank 1 non-legend, and as we can see from a few of these tweets, Cassie had some winning stats. I believe it was exactly 50% win percentage, and went from rank 29 to rank 4057.
Oof.
38 and 38, and dropped over 4,000 ranks.
That ain't right.
And
That ain't right.
while I do think that it is possible that you can go even and should lose some ranks, that is an absurd number of ranks to lose, and is a large reason why I am not playing ladder on North America, because I was playing earlier and I was constantly queuing into rank 2 players, and I would win and get anywhere from 30 to 50 legend points, and when I would lose, it would be at least 100, closer to 200 legend points whenever I lost. So your ability to climb is just really hindered, and it doesn't feel like it's even possible without an insane win percentage. So hopefully we get a response on this. I know we were having issues like this about 2 months ago with the MMR issues, so I kind of hope that it was something they changed, because if it wasn't something they changed, then I have no idea what's going on. Because last month felt okay. I don't remember having any of these issues last month, so I'm wondering if it has anything to do with the patch 11.2 or what's going on. But something I thought we should bring up and talk about. And I don't know, what do you think about this, Appa?
This seems like another case of a lack of transparency from Blizzard. I mean, like, it seems like at this point there's definitely something happening, and I don't know. I just feel like it would be nice to like have like Ixar or anybody be like, either say no, this isn't an issue, or hey, we're looking into what's going on. Like, I think just a statement like that would be would go a long way coming from anybody really. Because of this, I hit Legend on EU. I looked at the play button and I said nope, and went over to NA to ladder up to Legend, because I am not doing that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm over playing on Asia again, even though I told myself I was going to focus on getting a higher number before I went over and did my other grind. But it just doesn't make sense with how it's working right now.
Yeah, I was gonna try and ladder up to like around 500 or so, and then go to NA, but I was like, nope, I don't want to end up 10,000 legend by losing 2 games.
Yeah. Well, and Blister Guy has a theory. He talked about this shortly before the show, that this actually comes up it's less noticeable in months where there are HCT playoffs, because people are more focused on that. So maybe that's why it didn't come up as much last month. But that this seems to happen usually towards the middle and end of the month, pretty consistently. And he has a theory that MMR dynamically adjusts based on the volume of legend players, which I would not be surprised if the goal here is to normalize your average 50-50 player towards the mean, towards the middle of the pack. That would explain why going 50-50 at a high legend drops you so many ranks, because 50-50 is supposed to be in the middle of the pack, and the people at the top are supposed to have really high win rates. But it's whatever the formula is that they're using, and it might be like an ELO-based formula, like they use in Swiss, in chess, and in Magic rating. If they're using that to try and dynamically adjust as many players towards the middle as possible, if their record tends towards the middle, doesn't work in Hearthstone, because your average good player's win rate is not going to be in the 70 and 80% range, and it's unsustainable and a ridiculous grind for anyone trying to do it, as well as just doesn't match the experience your average player has. So there's got to be something dynamic about how the MMR is being adjusted, and losses very clearly hurt you more than wins gain you. Something's going on there, and it does need an adjustment, because the quality of life for the players trying to grind a high legend finish is just so untenable at this rate.
Yeah, like, to qualify for next playoffs, like, I need to hit these next couple months. Like, I need to spike some high legend finishes. So, like, this happening, like, I have to hit legend on NA and EU, and then just kind of wait until this fixes itself out. Because, like, I mean, I guess I could high roll super hard and like win the lottery and go like 80% up to number 1 legend, but like that's not realistic. That's just not feasible.
Even 80% feels like you would only go up to like top 100.
Yeah. But yeah, it is spooky right now for people who need these points.
Right. I mean, I'm in a similar situation. I had a really bad first 2 months of the season, so I'm hoping that something happens that fixes it, but we'll kind of see, I guess. The last news item we have on here is the live Hearthstone Pro Team standings. I don't want to go too long into this because we've already had a really long news section, but Fade to Karma is at the top by a really wide margin, and it's not really a big surprise because their top 2 players are Board Control and Fino, who are just crushing everything right now. And also there's just Glazer with a casual 40 points, which is higher than most everybody else on the rest of the list. So they're a hefty favorite right now, over 20 points ahead of second place, which is Tempo Storm, who is also having a really good year so far. Saiyan's at 35 points, Muzzy's killing it with 56, and Amnesiac, that's just a killer team already. So not really surprised to see them at rank 2. And then just rounding out the top 5, you have Team Genji Blue, Nordivined, and Complexity Gaming. So kind of see how these update over the next couple weeks. I'm sure we'll get into that when it gets closer to the end of the year, and the team standings really matter a lot when it comes to prize payouts. And that's all I had for the news.
That's it? Nothing more?
That's it.
Yes.
just an hour of news. Easy.
We'll have a short show, he said. There's not that much, he said. Yeah. We just need to really own ourselves.
Are you talking in the third person? I don't think I said that. I think somebody else said that. Maybe you.
So let's go to the
show.
tournament section, just to make sure we keep things moving right along here, and to conveniently distract from whatever it is that Botticus is saying, that silly guy.
It's the grand tournament.
Alright, so, major tournament, the premier level tournament, we had Dreamhack Summer in Jönköping, Sweden. I'm sure I said that wrong. If you were Swedish, feel free to correct me. But it was last hero standing, as Dreamhacks always are. As a reminder, last hero standing, once you lose with the deck, you can't play it anymore, and if you win with the deck, you have to keep playing it. Different format from what we talked about last week at Seoul, which was Conquest. It's Fury Hunter won this tournament over Painha Danny, or I'm not sure if it's Painha or Painha. There's an H in there. I don't know. But Fury Hunter won over Painha Danny. Fury Hunter did not play Hunter, which I'm upset by, but it's fine. Greensheep took 3rd place. Faley took 4th. And then Twink, Aqua Wonder, Leta, and Albritson made the top 8. There were a bunch of big names in the top 16 as well. Casey, Sho, Muzzy, Board Control, and Janetsky and Zorkthar also are known performers. So we'll talk about that meta in a little bit. I do want to talk about a couple other tournaments that happened that were definitely more on the fun side. The History of Hearthstone happened about 2 hours before right now. The finals, and the finals of the History of Hearthstone is now in Wild. So Dane won the whole thing. Dane Hearth. Love that guy. You probably know him from every Trollden video ever. And Nyria took 2nd place. Nyria beat Zalay in the losers bracket and fought Dane in the finals. We didn't get to watch the entire tournament because, again, this happened today. We'll go into a little bit more detail next week, but it was fun to watch. Definitely worth going back and checking out on Tempo Storm's channel. And the Battle of the Discords was this past weekend. So there were lots of representation from the entire community. I know that Robobson played, Spivey played, he went 4-2, had a really crazy game with, of course, Miracle Rogue, so definitely go check that out. There's a lot of VODs over in the Team Hearth League channel, which those were the guys that were casting it, and it was a lot of fun to watch. Glee, G-L-E, is how you say it, I'm going to say Glee, and Paper Ninja made the finals, and Glee was the winner, so congrats to those guys. Alright, as far as tournament meta goes, so again, last hero standing, it's going to be a little different, not a lot different from Conquest. In the top 16, Warlock was still the most played class. 12 even Warlocks, and 4 Q-Blocks, kind of reflecting the trend we're seeing on ladder, where they have different matchup spreads, but even Warlock is definitely a little bit more aggressive and a little bit better at containing aggression by being aggressive itself. And it's kind of fit pretty well in this anti-control meta that we had originally. Q-Block is an anti-control deck and has fallen off a little bit in representation. Still very good. Still also very play skill intensive. It's all 16 players had a Warlock, and 12 of the 16 had even Warlock. As far as Druids, 14 to 16 had this. We had 7 Taunts, 5 Tokens, 2 Spiteful Druids. There were 9 Rogues. That was the next most popular class. 6 Miracles and 3 Odds. Miracle is definitely becoming more popular these days. 5 Shutterwalks and 3 even Shamans. Yeah. Priest had 5 Priests, 2 Lyra combos, 2 Control Priest, and 1 Dragon Priest. There were 4 Warriors, 3 Taunt, and 1 Odd Control, 4 Odd Paladins, 2 Big Mages, and 2 Recruit Hunters. The Hunters, I'm really surprised there weren't bigger numbers here. Maybe in Last Hero Standing, it doesn't have as many polarized matchups, so it doesn't see as much play. It's a more well-rounded deck, but pretty surprised to see the low level of representation. The winning lineup, Fury Hunter played at Token Druid, Odd Rogue, Even Warlock, and Odd Warrior. So you kind of see the matchup spread that is pretty common in LHS. You really want decks that are going to be polarized as much as possible, so that as long as if you're losing to a deck, you want to make sure you have a hard counter to bring back. So props to Fury Hunter on his win. As far as games to watch goes, well, there was a really fun game. Greensheep played really, really well in this tournament. And Appa, I know you watched a game where he got high roll like crazy. I'm going to ask you about that after I talk here. But the game he played against Leta was really interesting. Combo Priest, like a really low curve combo Priest with unpowered Steambot from Leta versus Greensheep's Token Druid. And I think we've learned from playing Token Druid that it's really more of almost a control deck, or at least a really weird mid-range combo deck, where you're not committing a lot to the board early on most of the time. It's very flexible, but it's definitely meant to wind up and make a big punch. Greensheep was not able to play this game at all, because Northshire Cleric into Radiant Elemental into Tar Creeper into Witchwood Piper is the curve opening that Combo Druid has. Chock full of cards, any trade they make will draw them cards, and all their spells cost 0 or 1. It's really, really scary. So Greensheep had to play really defensively. There was a turn 2 Power of the Wild. There was a turn 4 Whispering Woods with no buff just to get on the board. But Leta still had this super wide, super advanced board, and he kept committing just enough into it that Leta couldn't go for the kill, didn't have the Divine Spirit Interfire to do enough because all the minions were smaller. They were potent, but smaller, until Greensheep could kind of recover on the board with UI into Arcane Tyrant. That gets countered by a 9/9 unpowered Steambot. And then Greensheep plays Whispering Woods. Leta top decks the Wild Pyromancer. It looks like Leta is back on the aggressive plan, and Greensheep's only at 21 life, facing down a 9/9 and a Shadow Ascendant. But spreading play slows things down. Violet Teacher lives behind it, and the board starts filling up again. And Leta keeps the one big minion. Ends up being, I think, an 11/16 unpowered Steambot. But that's not quite enough. There's a 15-minute game with a lot of really interesting gameplay, and resulted in the intelligent, flexible, and defensive Token Druid player using their cards unconventionally to come out on top. I was really impressed by Greensheep's play. Would definitely recommend checking it out. Now, Appa, I remember you saying not like this. Which game was that?
Oh my god!
What happened?
So this was actually semifinals, game 5, Greensheep versus Penhadani, and Penhadani had a very good start. Greensheep also had a very good start, and Greensheep piloted this game extremely well. He took like the necessary risks that he needed to. He used his resources about as well as he possibly could have, given incomplete information, and it even lined up against Penhadani's hand very well. But Penhadani kept drawing exact perfect off the top, I think for 3 or 4 turns in a row. Greensheep tried setting up lethal like on all of those turns and was just high rolled off the top by like Lightning Storms and Hagatha and Volcano. It was really sad to watch as a fan of Greensheep, but his play and his composure while this was still happening was really impressive. And I would suggest watching that game as well, because like the pressure he was under didn't affect his decisions at all. And I think he made the right choices on pretty much all of his turns, but just got really, really unlucky.
I mean, that'll happen. It's sometimes it's not your day, and we watched Greensheep's play, and the announcers were definitely praising him. I didn't see that game in particular, so I can't judge specifically, but it's a feels bad moment when someone of that skill caliber gets rolled on camera. I'm sure he will be back in the spotlight pretty soon, though.
Yeah, I didn't watch like too much of the tournament. I like popped in and out of it, but that was a set that I did see was Greensheep in the semifinals, because he's been kind of looking for another breakout performance for a while now. So it was nice to see him at least make that deep of a run.
And he'll be back in the global games. So, looking forward to seeing that. The other game to watch, I linked a 1-minute clip in the show notes. You can also go to Tempo Storm's Twitter or Sottle's Twitter. He was casting it. It was Dane versus Orange in the History of Hearthstone. It was Game 4. It is a 60-second clip that will bring you nothing but joy and happiness. First,
it was so good.
Oh my god.
It was so funny.
Like, Orange makes this play that is so terrible that he turns off his webcam. And all the announcers like, Orange, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And then the next turn, it doesn't matter because Dane plays Death Grip and high rolls him so hard that Orange just quits immediately. Yes.
Oh, it was so good.
Yeah.
I just love that Dane ended up winning this whole thing. I know he worked really hard on it. He's a really great entertainer because I watch his YouTube videos all the time, and he's very, very skilled at the wild format. So really just awesome that he did so well in this tournament. Really kudos to him.
I strongly agree. And this tournament was definitely more fun. It reminded me a little bit of Seat Story in kind of that atmosphere. I would definitely recommend checking it out. Okay, so coming soon to a Hearthstone near you. First of all, the HCT Tokyo qualifier is this weekend, June 23rd, 24th. It starts at 11 a.m. Japan Standard Time. So if you're in the States or the Americas, it will probably be pretty late at night on the 22nd. If you're in Europe, it'll probably be pretty early in the morning on the 23rd. If you're in Australia, I haven't done the conversion and I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I'm jealous of your coffee. And that's the Global and APAC qualifier. Global qualifier number 2 and the Japan qualifier the week after. Hearthstone Nationals is also this weekend. We talked about it a bit. There are 7 streams, 7 languages, and 7 countries participating, all being streamed on local channels this weekend. We have all of them in the show notes and the link attached. The UK finals, Jackie Chan will be streaming. That's the only one in English. Then Arma TV is streaming the French finals. Camland is streaming the Germany finals. Morningstar the Italy finals. Black Fire Ice for Poland. The Star Ladder channel is going to stream Russia. And the OG Series channel is going to stream Spain. So, lots of Hearthstone to review and watch. And if you are multilingual, feel free to multi-twitch and your brain will just fire off all sorts of different directions. And then the Swaggoid tournament is this weekend. Coming up. It's this June 23rd at noon Eastern Daylight Time. And that is one of the benefits of the Swaggoid membership, as we talked about last episode. SGCMM was the hashtag. We had 3 people tweeted us. They got free 1-month membership. Andrew Hoyt, Hemi Power Drone, and Sko Simon. Congratulations, you win those. We actually got 1 more membership to give away. If you tweet at us this week, we will we'll send it your way before the tournament. So, feel free to tweet us. Again, that hashtag is SCGMM. That's all I got for the tournament section. And now it's time for some Decksplanations. Y'all ready?
Y'all ready for this? No.
No, it's what we're actually supposed to say is, are you ready for a miracle? Dun dun dun!
All right. So we're talking about Miracle Rogue this week, and I guess I'm starting off this section. I probably have played it the least out of the three of us, but have still played it a lot.
You can just tee us up on the talking points then.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Uh, so I've been playing mostly the auctioneer version, but I know both of you have some good experience with the sprint version. We haven't really talked about it yet in this meta, and it's a little bit different than before. So why don't we just kind of go into it, Appa? Why is Miracle so good right now? What do you think are the reasons why it's doing so well?
Well, Miracle really thrives in a format. Well, traditionally has and is still the case now. It thrives in a format that's on the slower side and doesn't have too many fast decks that prey on it. The decks that really beat it right now are I'm I'm not actually sure of the percentage, but from experience, I have trouble with Odd Rogue, I have trouble with Odd Paladin, and
Yep.
I almost auto lose to Tempo Mage. And
That's a bad one.
yeah,
I think that is the worst possible matchup because like explosive runes is so
Ugh.
good against you. It's
Yeah.
like it counterspell your minion and also take face damage at the
like
same time.
even when I'm on coin and I coin out and do a counter spell and you have the I got you moment, I'm still staring down like a 3/3 mana worm, a 2/3 arcanologist, and a Kirin Tor Mage. I'm so dead right now.
Yeah, and there's 2 fireballs in their deck somewhere, and I'm probably not killing them before those come out.
And Miracle
So-
Rogue needs the coin. Like throwing it
Yeah,
away doesn't feel good. You back when you could play the coin, back when it was post nerf innervate, you put it on your deck on purpose. You needed that card. So
Yeah.
throwing away the coin for some decks is okay. Sure, I don't care. I'm even Warlock. I'll still play my Mountain Giant next turn. But throwing away the coin when you Miracle Rogue is throwing away a combo activator and throwing away that extra point of mana that you really need because if you don't cheat mana with Miracle Rogue, you lose.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So it's to kind of just give us simple answers. Like it's really good right now because the format's pretty slow.
Yeah, it's slow, and as Hat was saying before we started, it has really good mid-range minions. It has the Hench Clan Thug and the Faldori Strider, which are insane in the deck. And I've always said that Miracle Rogue is always going to be good when you can dagger on turn 2 and not be dead immediately. Which, when you're playing against Odd Paladin and you dagger on turn 2, it feels real bad because you're probably dead.
It's so
Real
awkward
quick.
against Odd Paladin too, because like you dagger on 2, then you want to kill something, and then you have a thug in your hand. And you're like, oh, this is kind of inefficient. This doesn't feel good.
and you know it's a bad matchup when your best card against them is Fan of Knives, and sometimes you play both Fan of Knives and still lose.
Oh yeah, I'll fan against them, and they'll just be like, okay, I lost the jungle hero power. I'm like, I'm cold to this. I'm cold
Yeah.
to these 4/1/1s.
Yeah, it's the way to beat Odd Paladin as any rogue is get a bigger board than them faster, and as Miracle that is almost impossible. It's because you're really just not meant to develop early. At least Odd Rogue has 1-drops, and a lot of good
Yeah.
1-drops, but you don't have anything remotely like that as Miracle Rogue. That matchup is pretty bad. I'm looking at it right now. Spell Hunter is also not a fantastic matchup.
Oh
It's-
man,
Yeah,
that one.
anything with Spellstone,
Yeah.
like the versions of Recruit Hunter that play Secrets and Spellstone is also really bad because 4 3/3s is a lot of 3/3s. And
If they play Killiseth on 2 as Hunter, I'm like, yes, I have a chance. If they go like turn 2 Secret, I'm like, okay, I want a dagger, probably hit. That's probably a 3-drop. So
Yeah.
this sucks.
It's so now that we've talked about all the reasons this deck is terrible, why do we like it so much?
well,
It's
I
got
mean,
thugs
Druid.
and 4/4s.
Yeah, I mean, you have Druid is a very large portion of the metagame, which you are good against most of the Druid decks, and also Warlock is pretty popular right now, and it crushes Evenlock for the most part. I have seen some people say that matchup is really close, and I think that very high level high level pro players can navigate that matchup really well. I call back to DreamHack Austin, where Amnesiac played that matchup quite a bit, his even lock versus Rogue and was pretty successful as he won the tournament. But for the most part, you are very favored against two of the more popular decks in the meta, which are the many Druid decks and even Warlock.
Yeah, the deck really thrives whenever you can stick one of its threats on an empty board or while your opponent is developing their game plan, and then kind of just leverage that with by like playing a Faldori Strider after a Hench Clan Thug, or like Faldori Strider and then being able to Vile Spine their Mountain Giant that comes down on 4 with tempo, so then you're ahead on board. It really wants to stick one of its mid-game threats and then leverage that into a snowballing advantage.
And really, a really good litmus test of how you can tell if Miracle Rogue is right for the format. You think about the card Sap, and Sap is really the defining litmus test for how you can see, should I play Miracle Rogue right now? Because Sap doesn't gain you a card. Effectively, imagine that you're trading the time and the extra mana crystals your opponent has to spend to redevelop. Is that worth more than a card? So, even Warlock hates the card Sap. It does not want to deal with the card Sap because they play 1 minion at a time. Druid, Taunt Druid, doesn't love the card Sap because you get the giant taunt of the way you cost them their entire turn for 2 mana. You can do other stuff and they can't. And sometimes, if you're playing against Recruit Hunter or any deck with Carnivorous Cube, they eat something really juicy and say, oh, I'm going to get this next turn. They say, nope, back to your hand. And sapping Seeping Oozlings and Carnivorous Cubes feels real nice because it's a silence and it costs them mana. And it undoes their entire game plan. And you probably hit them in the face.
They cube something and don't break it right away, then you hit them with the objection.
Yes. Someone's been playing Phoenix right.
Yeah, I have.
Might be my fault. And Rogue is really... The Valier is the queen of single target removal. She does not do well with wide boards. But if single target removal at a reasonable pace, when you're not also facing damage from the hand, that's when you want to be playing Miracle. And you also have the capability of putting out these crazy amounts of burst damage. Too much armor is problematic. A glut of removal with defensive options is problematic. Big Spell Mage is actually surprisingly bad matchup, even though the deck is really slow. Because if you don't attack them quickly, Arcane Artificer is... The words I have for that card when I'm playing Rogue are not appropriate for this podcast. But at a certain point, if you don't put them in burst range, they will stop you from developing any board for more than a turn at a time. And they don't care about your spiders because they can't attack right away. So, Faldori Strider has done so much for this archetype, and HenchClan Thug has done so much for this archetype too. I really think those two cards are why this is back in style and why Miracle Rogue's been around for a little bit. Because anytime you have a good mid-range threat, think back to Tomb Pillager in particular is what I'm thinking of, or HenchClan Thug is kind of filling that role, you get to start pressuring way faster, and when your opponent has to play defensively against Miracle Rogue, that usually means you get to win.
Thug is so good right now. Like, I've played, like, whenever I play this card, and they have the removal for it, I'm like, okay, that's fine. Then I Faldori Strider, I'm like, this is a 4-mana 16/16. You're going to have to deal with all these boys.
It's so many boys.
And the games, they have the answer to the Thug a lot of the time, because people just keep it because they need to kill the Thug. But the games where they don't kill Thug on curve, I almost win. I feel like I win at least 90% of those. Because that card snowballs so quick.
You feel so far ahead when you get to make a 5/5 Thug. It's just so, like, the difference between having it stick as a 4/4 and then becoming a 5/5, then you're looking at multiple cards to be able to remove it, and it's so hard for them to come back from that, from just a 3-mana minion, where, as I was trying to say earlier, Miracle Rogue's pretty good when you get to Dagger on 2 and not be dead right away, and when your follow-up is HenchClan Thug to it, then that's where you just want to be.
You ever gotten a Thug naturalize after it's dealt like 9 damage?
Yeah.
That feels good.
And then it's like, okay, here's my Edwin Van Cleef.
Yup.
Yes.
Getting naturalized after you Faldori Strider, now that feels real nice.
There are kids listening. Come on. Yeah,
So
it's a lot of these clunky answers to the format. Rogue thrives when the answers are not efficient enough, which is why sometimes Taunt Warrior can be a bad matchup, for example. They have a lot of one-mana answers. Shield Slams and Executes are really efficient, but against a lot of the decks that have slower answers, they just can't keep up with what you're trying to do because Miracle Rogue somehow funnels about 10 turns worth of stuff into about 4 turns, both in terms of card draw and in terms of mana expenditure. It just cheats for a short portion of the game, but it cheats enough that it's an incredible amount of pressure over a short period of time that's very difficult to keep up with.
You know what I'm thinking about? What kind of just popped into my head as another, I guess, litmus test for if Miracle Rogue is good is kind of asking the question, how good is Edwin Van Cleef right now? And right now, he's really, really good. He's fantastic. There's some answers for him, like Naturalize, but if you get a Van Cleef Naturalize, you just kind of recoup what you put into him anyways. But we're not living in the double Spellbreaker, like every deck playing double Spellbreaker
Ugh.
meta anymore.
Yeah.
So, like, Druid just can't actually play it. They can't play Spellbreaker or Ironbeak Owl. I mean, you can, but nobody does because you play what's the card name?
Oaken Summons.
You play Oaken Summons, and pulling that feels really terrible. So against Druid, your Van Cleefs are basically putting them to the Naturalizer bust test if you make a big Van Cleef. So if they have the answer, you feel fine with that, and then if they don't, they're dead. And then against even Warlock, they do run Spellbreaker sometimes, but I mean, I think most lists run a 1 of Spellbreaker. I could be wrong about that. But even then, you just put them to the test of having it, and then some of the time they don't, and they just instantly die.
Yeah, the problem with Spellbreaker and Evenlock is it feels like so often you're behind when they go for the Van Cleef. So even when they have the Spellbreaker, you still are going to likely be able to attack with it. And whenever you're able to attack with minions, even as a 2/2, like you can just kind of keep mounting this pressure against them that's really hard for them to deal with. I was going to ask you guys, I actually think we can just skip this next point. I want to know about the Sprint versus Gadget Stand debate. And kind of, since you guys have played both, I know you've played a little bit of both. I keep seeing people doing well with the Gadget Stand version, which is why I haven't personally tried out the Sprint version. And it's really hard for me to want to give up the 4/4. But now is your guys' chance to sell me on why Sprint belongs in this deck over Gadget Stand.
So I actually saw Gyong talk to some people on Twitter who were kind of asking the same question. And I think he made a really good point of it's not really like one versus the other, as in one's better than the other. It's kind of a question on how you want your deck to flow during the course of a game. So Auctioneer is an extra threat versus the very, very slow decks, which can be very beneficial. But it also doesn't allow you to do anything before turn 6. Usually you have to keep the coin for the Auctioneer to make him really profitable. Sometimes you have to Auctioneer and prep with no other spells in your hand and just kind of pray. That's you're truly like relying on a miracle at that point. Whereas with Sprint, you have more flexibility in your early game plays, in that you can expend your coins for early Elven Minstrels to gain card advantage, or for a Vile Spine on turn 4 against Mountain Giant and not feel bad about not having that coin for Auctioneer. Or you can prep Sprint on 4 if you don't have a good play on turn 4, and fill your hand with 4 cards and just get really far ahead of your opponent that way. So it's not so much about one being better than the other. It's kind of what you're seeing, like what you're playing against. And if you're looking to make your mid game more consistent, as opposed to really going over the top in the late game, I think, then I think you might want to go with Sprint over Auctioneer. But I mean, I like both versions of the deck. Like, Auctioneer makes for really stupid turns, but I like the ability to prep Sprint in the mid game And also sprinting into spiders feels really, really nasty.
Right. And a lot of times it feels like on your auctioneer turns, you almost don't want to draw into your spiders because the auctioneer is a big enough threat on its own. You like want one spider from it, but you don't want like all of the spiders all of a sudden because then they just AoE you and it sucks.
Against Big Spell Mage, I played a bunch of auctioneer into Big Spell Mage, and a lot of the time I'm casting spells and I'm crossing my fingers and hoping my spiders don't show up. Because they're probably going to have to Flame Strike the Gadgerzan anyways, or like Dragon's Fury it. So I'm like, spiders, stay in your home.
I wonder, I was going to ask this, the thought came up to me, is Miracle Rogue the original mana cheat deck? Was there a deck before Miracle Rogue that really like took heavy advantage of cards like Backstab and Preparation and Auctioneer, kind of cheating what you're able to do with the given amount of mana that you have?
Druid had Innervate, so that's a card.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the question you're asking, in terms of the original mana cheat deck, it's probably Handlock because they discounted 2 of the cards in their deck by 20 and 2 of the cards in their deck by 8. So it's not quite what you're asking. I get it. Miracle is probably the first deck that adopted consistent mana reduction and quantity of cards over quality as being relevant, and it had a lot of cost reduction mechanics, right? Prep and Shadow Step are both really relevant, and Backstab feels cost reduced because it doesn't cost anything.
Right.
It definitely feels like it does more than it should most turns, as opposed to a power spike, which is what Innervate and Molten and Mountain Giants really generated in Handlock and early mid-range Druid decks. It's Miracle is the first deck, I think, to really break the paradigm of 1 or 2 cards a turn. It really feels like it's the first deck to say, I'm going to do something way different than what you're used to doing. And it's probably one of the first off-the-beaten-path decks that really show that Hearthstone is a game with a lot of innovation and depth. And the other one is probably Freeze Mage, with Handlock not far behind. Handlock is also really interesting because you just do nothing and then take advantage of doing nothing by having a handful of cards.
Yeah, I think the feeling of Miracle Rogue feeling like it's doing more than it should most turns is because of, the nature of it kind of front loading all of its tempo as quick as possible, and then relying on either a card like Auctioneer or Sprint to recoup that disadvantage that you've created in card economy, because you're kind of just vomiting everything onto the board as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and then hoping you can refill later, which, I mean, Hat's talked about this infinite times on the podcast, but Miracle Rogue, it's not really a true combo deck, even though it can feel like that whenever you're getting auctioneered for 13 cards in a turn. But it's a tempo deck in disguise. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's a tempo deck that has very powerful late game refill tools, and it really relies on spitting out tempo and value early on in the game or in the mid game as efficiently as possible, and then reloading that.
And you think about why Sprint now and why this hasn't been tried before. Sprint was played pretty heavily in the Oil Rogue days.
Well, yeah, it has. I mean, it has been played before, obviously, in the Oil Rogue, but for a long time we had counterfeit coin, so it wasn't even a question.
And Tomb Pillager, which was an additional real coin. It doesn't matter.
So we had like Conceal in the past, and then you just played Auctioneer because Auctioneer Conceal was dumb, and then you could play with counterfeit coin. And now, after like all of those rotated, I think it's just been a case of other rogue decks being popular for so long that there hasn't been a lot of innovation within the builds, in the sense that nobody really is doing things too against the grain. Before, like, Gyong just plays so much rogue that he's just trying new stuff, and I'm sure he's played with Sprint before, and he hit #1 legend with Sprint, and he was like, he was saying that he doesn't think it's better than Auctioneer right now, but he was just trying the deck and he hit rank 1 with it, so oops.
Yeah, casual rank 1. Well,
Like I remember when Blister Guy, I don't remember how long ago this was, but it was months and months ago. He did one of his infographics on Miracle Rogue, and he took my deck that I was playing with at the time, and I was the only one on that list that was playing with Sprint. Everybody else had like Auctioneers, and it wasn't a question. I just had 2 Sprints in there. So it's definitely something that has been around for a while, but has definitely been Auctioneer favored. I just think that there's so much room in the mid game now where you're not just getting like threatened to be dead the next turn, that being able to like take off a turn and prep Sprint on turn 4 is like completely fine. Like you're not going to die the next turn unless you're playing against fireballs.
So, Hat, are you still keeping prep in your opening hands every time?
it's okay. So think this-
This is like a lot. Like I'm kind of framing it as in like a meme way, but I'm actually curious if you, because I know that was something you were strictly for back when actually I just first started on the podcast, when after I just won the listener league, because I was a never keep prep in my opener Miracle Rogue player, and you said you were always at that point, but obviously the lists are different now, so I want to know what your take is, because you've always said that the deck is, you know, a tempo based deck. You want tempo, and prep is really great tempo, so I'm interested.
So since then, they printed 3-mana 5/5 called Henchclan Thug and Faldori Strider, which those 2 are always keeps. Henchclan and Faldori Strider. It's prep on the coin almost always. The difference now versus then is that the format is so different. This format is defined by power swings on turn 4 from the decks you want to beat, which is Druid with Oaken Summons and even Warlock with everything in their deck, Twilight Drake, Mountain Giant, etc. Turn 4 matters a lot, and that's when you either get to prep Sprint or play Strider or prep Sap Minstrel or coin Vile Spine. There's so many power plays, but all of your power plays on turn 4 use 2 cards or more in your hand, and it makes Gadgetzan worse, because you want to play them then, right on turn 4, and then you want to draw cards with Gadgetzan, and you have to make the choice. With Sprint, you don't have to make the choice. You can either prep the Sprint if they don't do anything, or you can develop if they do something and still counter their play, and then Sprint is the guaranteed refuel without you having to make the compromise. Because you have to be better earlier now, because every deck in this format has some kind of crazy late game. Partially due to the Death Knights, partially due to the synergies, the amount of Carnivorous Cubes and Charged Devil Swords we're seeing. Late games are so much more bursty now that you have to be faster at that in terms of developing and grinding people down. So it really makes a big difference on how quickly you develop your threats, which is why it's so important to find Hench and Strider earlier on. You can keep SI in a more minion-based matchup, but 2 damage doesn't matter against an even Warlock most of the time, at least not on turn 3. You're not coining him out. You keep Edwin. It's Edwin, come on. But
on coin, right?
on coin, going
you
first...
don't keep it going first unless you have like a prep, right?
Yeah, it depends on the contents of your hand.
I mean, this is Miracle Rogue. Every answer is it depends. Every single one.
Right.
Except for, do you keep Henchclan Thug? No, yes, keep it. Put it in your hand. And probably Strider too.
Who was that was just talking about? Well, I guess it's a different. Actually, Cream Puff was just talking about this, but it was the Tempo Rogue, and he said in the aggressive matchups, you mulligan Henchclan Thug if you already have Keleseth and are going first, because
he's playing Argent Squires and Blink Foxes and Serenite Chain Gangs. There are definitely cards in his deck that I'd want more often. Henchclan Thug, outside of Firefly, is your only real early answer. You could, in the aggressive matchups, if you're against Paladin, I could see throwing back the Thug. It would hurt me inside, but I could see throwing back the Thug and looking super hard for Fan, Backstab, SI, and Firefly. I don't know, though. It's
I still don't know that you could ever throw in the Miracle specifically, just because you don't have many, if any, 2-drops that you ever want to play other than Dagger.
So I just want to go back to the original question real quick.
Sorry.
Which was, or are you always keeping prep? Because this is actually something I've been thinking about a ton while I've been playing. Because I mean, I feel like this is just like a famous hat quote. Just always keep prep.
Yeah, and always is loose. Obviously, we say always, but we mean most of the time or rarely. I was in the rarely camp. Obviously,
I think that it can be broken down into like a pretty easy decision tree, which is if you're playing in a matchup where you need to cheat on mana to stay at parity or get ahead, then you keep prep, and those kinds of matchups are like the matchups that are bad for you, like Odd Rogue, where you'll need to like develop a threat and then prep a Vis their Hand Clan Thug or something, or against Paladin, where you need to again play a threat and prep Fan. I'll usually try and keep a prep there, but usually when the Hench Clan Thug and Faldori Strider are good enough plays in the mid game, I'll usually throw away a prep because I'm looking for those threats and I'm looking for my card quality to be a little bit better because I'm not looking so much for cheating on tempo as I am for overloading them, bottlenecking their removal with more threats than they have answers for. So like against Even Warlock, I'm looking for Thug and Strider because they line up very good against Hellfire, and they're looking to tap a bunch and play a Mountain Giant or Twilight Drake, and at that point I've already developed my 2 minions, and I don't really need the prep there. I'm looking for like a Vile Spine or a Sap or something at that point. And then the same is true for Druid too, because you're looking to overload their removal with your threats. Like they'll probably have a Spellstone and upgrade it at one point and get to kill one of your dudes, but you're looking for a second dude to play as a follow-up to that, and you're not really leveraging the preps there as much either. So I think it really comes down to if you need to cheat on mana to stay even or to not just completely drown in your opponent's like board advantage, then I think you keep prep. But I think against the slower matchups, I think you can definitely mulligan it in search of the Saps and Striders and Hench Clan Thugs.
Okay, I like that explanation. Do you like that explanation, Hat?
I am pleased.
So do we have anything else we want to talk about before we send out the question to our audience?
Not really. I mean, I'm sure we could talk about this for like just hours on end.
Oh yeah,
Please.
I love this deck.
I thought this could be an interesting topic to just kind of give a window into the deck because it is pretty complicated. Like every single game I play with it feels different than every other game I play with it, which is part of why I like the deck so much, because stuff it's different and it just feels like I'm doing a puzzle every game.
And it's funny because it's not different because you're like discovering things and getting random cards, and for the most part there are some builds that obviously run hallucinate, but for the most part it's always the same cards, but the way each game plays out, like you said, it plays out like a puzzle sometimes where you're like checkmate in 2 turns and then they do something stupid and random and you lose, but it's okay. Because
I think it's definitely a lot of fun to play, and I know there's such polarization on Rogue within the Hearthstone community in general. Like you either really like playing with the decks because they're like games can be fun and you have to like find creative solutions like what you're facing, and then some people really dislike Rogue because I mean it does cheat on mana. Prep's a pretty messed up card. But even like if you don't enjoy Rogue, knowing why it's good right now and how you can kind of punish it is, I mean, that's equally as important as like knowing why Rogue's fun for people, is knowing why it's good right now and kind of what you can play against it to punish Rogue. Play Mana Worms. Fireball them.
But that deck isn't good. Mana Worm isn't good against much else right now, so maybe don't. Either way, I'm gonna plug a little bit here. I was on 1600 Dust this week. It's the Know Your Role series, and I was selected to be the Rogue expert. And we talked a lot about the accessibility and the intimidation factor of Rogue. I don't want to go into it too much because it was covered pretty well over there. That'll be airing on their channel over the next few weeks, and the VOD is on my Twitch channel. But if you are new to Rogue, the sprint build is actually the way to learn Miracle, because the gadgets and turns get very complicated in terms of sequencing and in terms of planning and holding resources, and sprint is a little bit easier to play because you're not holding the resources quite as much. You can use prep and backstab and coin as more tempo-oriented activators early in the game and be way less punished for it. So now is a good time to learn Rogue. It's good, it's not too good, it's disadvantaged in some matchups, but you can still win them, and there's a major part of the deck's difficulty and complexity that you don't have to deal with right now. If you want to learn this deck, both learn how it wins so you can beat it, and learn how to play it so you can play it, now is a good time. It's not really all that expensive to make. You only need Edwin and Leroy as far as legendaries goes. There's a few epics. You need to make sure you have the epics. It can feel intimidating at first. And everyone remembers the Rogue game where, what the hell happened and now I'm dead, when you're playing against it. But if you get to play with it and kind of learn the way to navigate these matchups, the way to practice these games, and see how all the pieces come together, you may find yourself enjoying it or winning with it, or at least getting to know it a little bit better. It seems scary at first, I promise, but that does go away. And there's lots of community members more than willing to help, including all three of us.
Yeah, I love talking about this deck. There's the amount of discussion you can get into with the different lines in this are just really interesting to me. So if you have questions, make sure to hit one of us up. We'll be happy to answer Miracle Rogue questions for you. But we have a question for all of you listeners now. We want to know what you want us to talk about next week. There are so many decks in the meta right now. It's kind of hard to know what you guys want to hear, and we're really interested to hear what you guys want to hear about. So hit us up on Twitter, tweet at Concede, and let us know what you want to hear for the next week's Decksplanations, because we'll talk about it. We'll get into a deck. If there's a different topic you want us to discuss in depth, we'll be happy to do that as well. And yeah, we're just looking forward to hearing from what you guys want to hear, because I feel like every week we kind of just come up with, well, this is what we've been playing, so we can talk about that, or this is what's going on in the meta right now, we can talk about that. But I think it'd be good to have a community member reach out and give us a good topic to delve into next week.
Yeah, I think on my NA account I have 14 standard decks made, and all of them are very good ladder decks. So it's kind of hard to really pin down one thing to talk about, and we kind of get overwhelmed sometimes, like from week to week, and we're like, what should we do? I don't know. We've been playing Miracle Rogue. Let's do that. So
Well,
it'd be nice to really kind of mold it more to what people want to hear. Not saying that people don't want to hear about, I don't know, like Rogue or whatever we've been talking about recently, but we really want to cater to what people are actively wanting to listen to.
And if you don't send us a question, we might talk about Rogue again, because now we're all playing it. So you have the power to stop this, but if you don't, we might not either. All right,
Well, I think there's only one question left, Hat.
And what question is that, Botticus?
How long can this go on?
About another 5 minutes. We'll get there. Thanks to Stefan L for letting us use his cover. Check him out in his channel linked in our show notes. Big thanks to Hearthstone Top Decks and BeerBrick.com for Decklists, Meta Legend for replays, Hearthstone tournaments on YouTube for tournament VODs, and Old Guardian for his tournament analysis reports. Show notes for this week's episode are on CoinConcede.com. You can support our show at Patreon.com/CoinConcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.tv/CoinConcede Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. Write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede. If you'd like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producer.
It's so fluffy!
And big thanks to our partners at Swagoy Gaming. Appa, I see you have it typed out already. Give us your hot, fresh coin concede back from vacation.
So my first coin concede is to Rod Johnston from Tier 5 podcast because we went on vacation with him and his wife. They shared a suite with Taylor and I in Cancun, and that dude is just a blast to be around. He's really funny. He's awesome. He was great to meet in person, and he is taller than I am. He is massive. He is
Oh,
6'3".
I want
of
to
just
meet him
a
specifically
pure
for the
goofball.
spectacle.
Oh, it's gonna be a meme when you guys finally meet, because you'll get on his back and you'll ride him around like a horse.
Yes.
And then my second coin concede is to EVGA, because they just recently sponsored Crescents, the team I play for. And I got back from vacation and I had a new mouse, new keyboard, a new mouse pad, a t-shirt, and a lanyard from them. And I've been using them ever since I got back, and they're all fantastic. So EVGA is awesome, and I love them now.
That's awesome. Man.
Yep.
Get signed to this team, you win tournaments, you get free stuff, go to Cancun, hang out with Rod. Life is good.
Yep.
Botticus, how about you?
I'm just gonna steal one of yours. I'm gonna coin concede to Pear HS. She got signed to F2K, and I think that is awesome. I remember when she had kind of just started streaming and was getting into it, and it feels like not even that long ago, but I know she's worked really hard to get where she's at, and it's awesome that she's able to join such an awesome team, and I really look forward to the content she's able to produce in the future.
How awesome is that? Oh my goodness.
It's so sweet. I was stoked when I saw that. I was like surprised and not surprised at the same time. I was like, wow, that's awesome, but like she's been working really hard, so awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, strongly agreed. It's the most important thing as a streamer, content creator is consistency, and she has been streaming like every day. I don't know how she does it, but super big props to Pear. And I have a few coin concedes. First, RVA. I was actually supposed to say this last week, but he just had a couple really nice comments, or they had some really nice comments in the coin concede Discord like a week and a half ago. I mean, they're always nice, but in particular, thanked the coin concede community for their positivity, and we'd like to thank you, RVA, for your positivity. And I try to be upset at how good your food pictures look when you make all these amazing macaroons. The chocolatey ones. They look delicious. I can't have them. I want them, but I can't stay mad at you. Props to the 1600 Dust Squad for having me on Know Your Role 2018. Super duper fun. Keep your ears out for that episode. The whole squad was there. Know Your Role was actually how I got my start in podcasting 2 years ago, so it is near and dear to my heart. I was Warlock back then. I'm Rogue now. I used to be evil, and now I'm kind of chaotic in the middle there. I don't know what that says about me. Don't think about it too much. It's fine. And shout-outs to Andrew and Steve. Andrew Brown over at the Happy Hearthstone, and Wicked Good Steve Lubitz over at Off Curve. A year ago or so, we did an episode of the Happy Hearthstone, the ultimate guide on how to hit legend, and it's been about a year, and also about a year since Off Curve started. So
That's been a year?
right?
Oh my goodness.
It's time flies when you're having fun, playing ladder, roguing. You get the idea. So that was a year ago, and so we revisited the topic. I think it really came together well. Very different tone than the last episode because first, the ladder's changed a lot, and second, our perspectives have changed a lot. And I think it came out really, really nicely, and those are always just great guys to talk to, whether you're on a podcast or not. And I just want to point out also, Andrew went 6-1 in UHL this season. I think 18-9 in games. Guy is a rock star. So keep an eye out for him in the next season of UHL because I am nervous. Shout out as well to Cookies and Cream Ice Cream because you've always been there for me, and there was a long discussion yesterday on Twitter about favorite flavors of ice cream, and no matter what I try, I keep coming back to Cookies and Cream. So that's
chocolate fudge, so good. Baskin Robbins chocolate fudge ice cream. That's what my picture was last night.
That sounds amazing.
Bananas, gummy bears. Oh, so good.
Wow, I didn't know you liked fruit.
Yeah, I like fruit. Not so much the vegetables, but fruit is good.
Yes.
But
I thought your diet consisted exclusively of burgers.
Yes, plain burgers.
I mean, for the most part, yes.
So anyways, Appa, what's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Crap. That's not That's not my answer.
I
I mean, cookies and cream is pretty good. We have this flavor in the freezer right now. It's called Cookie Two-Step, and it's like cookies and cream with cookie dough bits in it.
Oh my!
It is the nut high. It's very good.
I want that thing right now. I'm gonna go pause the podcast and eat something because I'm suddenly really hungry. Okay, let's just get over our contact information and then I can go eat for real. Botticus, where can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at BotticusHS. And you could also follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Botticus. I only was able to stream once this last week, which kind of sucked. But always hope that I'll be able to have more time to stream over the weekend. Now that I've found like this test rogue deck, I'm much more interested in streaming because I think it's a lot more fun and I won't get so tilted if I'm losing. So check me out over there.
Appa?
You can find me on Twitter at Appa_HS, where I exist 24/7 these days. And you can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/AppaHS. I'm pretty sure my stream should be coming back this week because I've gotten all settled in, and I still need to do a couple things. I still need to get like advised for classes, and I need to call place back about job interview. But I think after the next couple days, I'll be streaming again fairly frequently. So keep an eye out for that, and I'm sure I'll announce it on Twitter. So yeah, I'm excited.
I'm excited for Appa stream too.
You were warning us for months that this was coming when you're in the new place. You're back from Cancun. You're in the new place. I'm holding you to this. You got to stream in the next 7 days.
Oh, it'll probably be in the next like 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
So like whenever this podcast gets released, hopefully my streams will be back.
Yes. So you're not going to stream within sprint days. You're going to stream within prep sprint days.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, and you can also find me on Twitter at Ridiculoushat, twitch.tv/Ridiculoushat, and on Discord, go ahead and tag me in any Hearthstone-related Discord, and I shall respond. That is going to do it. And extra appropriate this week, keep calm and rogue on. And if you see us on the ladder, you can even prep first if you want to this week. Coin Concede.
Prep, coin concede.
Prep fam, coin concede.
The Brotherhood shall...
Take cold comfort in your victory. You win. I can rest now. You win. For now. Now, your victory proves nothing.
The day is yours.
I choose death. You have triumphed. This time, this hunt is yours.